Let's keep things rolling here on Cincinnati Bengals talk with a man that, well, I'm sure you've read a ton. You've seen him at Bengals.com, certainly read his work at Bengals.com. He is Geoff Butch Hobson, and he's on with us now. Geoff, I appreciate the time as always. I know you're a busy man. How you doing?
James, thank you. I know you're a busy man. New fathers are always busy. You throw in a beat, and it ain't easy.
Yeah. I will say I think I'm a diaper expert. I might be better at changing diapers than I am at covering the Bengals at this stage. But
You got to cover something.
That's absolutely right. And speaking of coverage, a former defensive backs coach turned defensive coordinator named Lou Anarumo was certainly a big topic earlier this week and really all offseason long. It was, and it's only been a few weeks, but will the Bengals be able to keep Brian Callahan? Will they be able to keep Lou Anarumo? What about quarterbacks coach Dan Pitcher? Troy Walters getting an offensive coordinator look. And I don't want to jinx it, but you look up now and it looks like Zach Taylor's entire staff is going to be back next season.
Yeah, that's the way it looks. You'd have to say it's really amazing, James. You're right. You hit all the names, and it's the fact that at least one of those didn't fall is but I think that also tells you kind of where this club is. I think Dan Pitcher decided that, this is a pretty good spot probably, with a guy named Joe Burrow. And talking to Brian Callahan about it, he's disappointed that he didn't get the head job, but he quoted the great Jim Harbaugh and said, you can't out happy. And, they're in a pretty good situation here. And Troy Walters is a guy that you got to feel like all these guys are eventually going to get their shot. But for Bengals fans, it's nice that it's been put off a little bit because really it's out of everybody's hands except for the teams doing the hiring, So, and I think that's one of the reasons, James, that Mike, when they hired Zach, I think one of the reasons they went with an offensive guy who would call his own plays and bring in his own system is that when guys did get poached, they would, it's his system, and he's here. The head man is here. Everything stems from that. Whereas back in the day with Marvin, if they lost an offensive guy, they pretty much had to not start from scratch, but pretty close.
Certainly, and it's so rare to have this type of continuity. And I said it after Lou was officially back, but it was planned. I planned on saying it because it felt like it was trending in that direction over the past couple of days. I said that they might have the best coaching staff in the league.
Yeah.
And that may sound crazy to some, and I don't think 3 years ago I ever would have envisioned myself saying it. But if Eric Bieniemy ends up going elsewhere, Andy Reid losing his right-hand man there, I get it, Reid, everything he's done. But I think you could certainly make the argument that Zach Taylor and his staff is up there with the best coaching staffs in the NFL.
Well, they've won the one AFC championship that the Chiefs didn't win. So you have to look at that. And you just look at what Lou's done in the last 2 years. I mean, what he's done in the playoffs, what he's done overall in that great streak to start the season with no second half touchdowns. I mean, the fact that December, January, February games combined the last 2 years, they've given up 19 points per game. I mean, that's just, they've not give up what they gave up. How many 300-yard passing games they gave up this year, James? Maybe two? And the second one was to Mahomes in the championship game, maybe. I mean, that is, and then you put on top of it, you have a top 5 quarterback. Yeah, I think you're probably, and then you get 2 1,000-yard receivers. Yeah, I mean, you got to look at the coaching. It's a coach's league, and if the players are producing at that level, then the coaching is good because there's no doubt it's a coach's league. The NBA is a players' league. Baseball is, I don't know what league that is. I guess that's an accountant's league. And football is a coach's league. And quarterback, but it's all tied in together.
No doubt. And let's go to the quarterback because you mentioned Joe Burrow. And there's plenty of chatter, certainly outside the organization, and we've talked about it here on this channel, is, okay, what's going to happen with Joe Burrow? Are they going to extend him? I personally think they're going to extend him this offseason. What's the structure going to be like? Can they afford to keep those two 1,000-yard wide receivers? So let me ask you, what's your gut feeling? Because Jamar obviously isn't eligible for an extension yet, but Tee
Right.
Higgins is, Joe Burrow is, Logan
Right.
Wilson is. There's a lot of moving parts. How do you feel and think this will play out?
Jamas seems to know. I was at the Super Bowl
That's
saying
right.
Joe's already got it figured out. But yeah, I think James. We've been in Cincinnati long enough. We know Mike Brown is gonna can't wait to sign this contract. Twice he made Boomer Esiason the highest paid player in the game. He made Carson Palmer the highest paid player in the game. So I have no doubt that that's going to happen again. And I think free agency. I think why in the last 3 years they've come out of the box so aggressively. DJ Reader, Von Bell 1 year, Hendrickson, Mike Hilton, Awuzie the next year, the offensive line the year after that. I think this is going to be a different deal where free agency is their own players. I think those are going to be the major deals, and I don't think they're working the phones that first week of free agency. I think people are calling them. People who want to come play here. So I think it's a different dynamic. They're going to be trying to sign their own, and I think they're going to be fielding calls from people who want to come.
I agree. I think that's the beauty of drafting well. And you're right. They've knocked it out of the park. I don't think there's another team in the NFL that's had as much free agency success as the Bengals over the past 3 seasons. I mean, it's just been one hit after another, and it's really – but obviously they've benefited, but drafting, that's what they've done on the offensive side, and they've nailed it. And that's why you're going to have to pay some of these guys. I agree with you. It's not going to be the same in free agency this year as it's been in past years.
Yeah, and I think how well the free agents have fit together. I think that shows you how good the coaching is, because they took what they saw what they wanted, how they wanted to use these guys, and these guys love it here. That's pretty clear. To me, that's a coaching that shows you. That's another example how good the coaching is, And but like you say, I mean, the other piece to that is you can't sign everybody, and that means you're going to have to continue to draft well.
Yeah, and that's I think the next stage, and you saw it with Dax Hill, and I want to ask you about some of these other free agents.
Yeah.
But just one more, the idea of keeping the trio together. I had Solomon Wilcots on last week from Radio Row, and he said, heck, I think you have to. Burrow, Higgins, Chase, that trio.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Because I certainly do. I think they're young. I think they're special. And we haven't seen the best of them yet, despite how well they've played over the past few years.
Yeah, my sense is they want to do all three. That's my sense. There's no I have heard no inklings of trying to trade Tee Higgins or anything like that. I think they want to keep those 3 guys together. I think I said to Dan Horde the other week, Burrow's a smart guy. He knows how much he's taken up the cap, and he knows he needs people around him. He did great things with the Lerman twins in Athens, but you're not there. They aren't coming back to play. So you need people, and Joe knows that. These people know that, and so I think that you keep these, and it's just clearly all 3 guys can get their numbers and win. Mm-hmm. They've proven that. So, I know in years past, guys have said, the perceived number 2 receiver wants to go be a number 1. TJ Houshmandzadeh could probably put him in. You can put him in that. Marvin Jones, you could probably put him in that. But I mean, I think here you get 2 number 1s, and they're both used that way. And I think, the lesson of Houshmandzadeh and Marvin Jones is the grass isn't always greener. The money may be better. In Marvin and TJ's case, I don't think the money was all that much different. But certainly their situations were, and they struggled. TJ got cut after a year. Marvin ended up going to Jacksonville, and it's just, different system, different quarterbacks. It's not always. So I think they, I think that's the plan. From what I can sense, is they'd like to keep everybody.
And I think a big difference, you're right, is the offense, where Jamar may have 5 catches one week, 12 the next. Yeah. Tee Higgins may have 2 touchdowns and just sky over opposing cornerbacks for, three big plays downfield one week, and then the next week it might not be him. And that's certainly a big difference. I agree with you. We'll see if they could keep all three. It would be exciting if they're able to.
And they don't seem to mind it. I mean, you've talked to these guys enough. They don't seem to mind that it's
not if you're winning.
Yeah,
and I think that's a major difference too. I guess Marvin Jones was winning, and he just decided to go elsewhere anyways. But still doing it, by the way, Marvin Jones. I'm shocked that he's still playing at the level he is. But other free agents, and there's a lot of them: Jermaine Pratt, Von Bell, Jesse Bates. It to me seems like a foregone conclusion that Bates ends up elsewhere when free agency hits. But how do you feel about some of these other guys? Do you think they're going to make a run at Vaughn? Does he make sense alongside Dax Hill with Lou Anarumo returning? Eli Apple's in that mix as well. A lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball that are set to become free agents.
I think what's really set this defense apart from other defenses they've had down through the years is how strong it is up the middle. You Reeder and Hill, and Pratt and Wilson, and Bates and Bell. So I would think you'd want to keep some semblance of that. Is it Pratt? Is it Bell? Is it Bates? I don't know. How many can you keep? I don't know. But like I say, I think when they come out of the box, like last year they came out of the box big on Cap and Karras, right? And LC, right? Well, this year, they're probably coming out of the box at some point before free agency because they can talk to their own guys. So, when that is, I'm sure they're giving these guys a break a little bit to go back and decompress. And I don't know how they come out of it. And how these things are. They went into 2020 really. They wanted to get like 2 linebackers, remember? And then they saw what the price for the linebackers was as the market evolved, and they said, "Oh my God, we'll go get DJ Reeder." So who knows what happens and how the market evolves? They may have a focus on 1 or 2 guys of their own, and then maybe something happens in negotiations, the market shifts or something like that, and maybe something else happens. So it's all about, you talk about Lou adjusting during a game. You got to adjust in free agency too.
No doubt. I mean, what a blessing it was not to get Nick Kwiatkowski or whatever linebacker in 2020.
That's what everybody wanted them to do, though, right? It's like,
yeah, and they ended up with a couple good ones, and I even think Akeem Davis-Gaither flashed some, so it will be interesting to see what happens there at linebacker. As we move forward here, we briefly touched, or you briefly mentioned, the offensive line and what they added, and I think it's interesting, Geoff, because it's been a topic, given how the season ended,
right?
But there were 3 backups in. And that's part of it. That's something I certainly don't want to overlook. It's not like they didn't address the line. They were playing pretty darn well. Going into Christmas Eve, and on Christmas Eve before Collins goes down, and overcame 1 injury, overcame 2. 3's a lot to overcome, and they got to an AFC Championship game. How do you view this offensive line from a need standpoint going into the offseason?
That's a great question. Clearly they're good in the middle. They're set in the middle for a while. It looks like Karras, Volson, and Karras. They're going to be around for a while.
And Kappa.
I'm sorry. Yes, Kappa, Karras, and Volson. They're going to be around for a while. The tackles. When is LC going to be able to get back? Did Carmen put himself in the left tackle conversation? He played pretty well, though. He played very well the last 2 games, I think they feel. So how does that play out? Is that a training camp battle? I don't know. I would imagine they're going to add pieces. I'm sure they're going to add pieces because they'll lose some backups. Probably it'll be hard. They'd like to get Sharping back. Can they? I don't know. But I think I think the tackle thing is an intriguing thing to me, and I would imagine they'd look at that in the draft, but I don't know how you make that. I don't think that's a top priority in free agency. I don't think. I think, but that lot. I think they'll take a look at the draft. They have. I think they still feel good about Prince. even though he never got on the field. But I think I think they like what he brings to the table. So, but I think I think both tackles are something to watch. I mean, Carmen, like I said, Carmen played well enough. It looked like to me he put himself in the left tackle conversation. And I would think at right tackle, depending on how, I mean, I think LC, once he played and got his feet under him, I thought he played pretty well. I remember he was hurt in training camp. Didn't practice much until like a week before the season. So, when does he come back from his ACL rehab? Is there a bridge guy between him and that? I don't know, but I would imagine we'll see some draft capital spent at that spot, I would think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the Jonah one, because obviously La'el Collins coming back from an ACL, suffered it on December 24th,
Right.
Didn't have surgery until January. It's just tough. You just don't know when he's going to be available. Right. So they're going to have a plan there. But the Jonah one's interesting because I think a lot of people thought he was going to take maybe not a huge leap, but a leap in 2022. And I find it tough to judge him because he played through that first dislocated kneecap. And as you know, the season moves fast. Yeah. Injuries are hard to recover from during the year. How much did that bother him? How much did that impact his play all season long? I don't know. And I'm not trying to make excuses for him.
Yeah.
But I don't really know what to make of Jonah Williams following the 2022 season. I don't think he played up to the level he was hoping to play at. But I don't know if that was based on an injury or not. And when he was out there, certainly I thought he was decent. Maybe, even though he didn't live up to the high expectations people have had for him.
Well, clearly he's been good enough to win with the last 2 years,
Sure.
And I think you make a great point about, I forgot about that. I forgot about until when he did it again, I had forgot that was this year that he had done that with the dislocation. I mean, remember all he did was he missed 6 snaps. He missed 6 snaps at the end of the first half and came back and played. I mean, that was, I forgot about it. And then, when I said, Jesus, sounds familiar with the kneecap. And then, all I know is up until, they had that stretch, when they won 10 in a row, Rapie, what was it? They they gave up 5 sacks to Cleveland on Halloween, and then they didn't give up more than 2 in a game until the wild card game, maybe.
That sounds right.
Until late
against
in the
Ravens. Yep.
Yeah, and then they started losing people. They threw a great game, but one of the great moments. People are going to forget what happened because they lost the next game. I remember those 3 guys came in and were huge in the divisional. Mm-hmm. You can say all you want. Well, it was snow. It was hard to pass rush, and it was the Bengals pass rushed okay on the snow. So I thought, and they ran for 100. They ran for 172 yards. So I mean, I there's people there that can play. Clearly.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you mentioned the bridge guy at right tackle. I wonder how they feel about Akeem Adeniji. He's on the roster. That doesn't mean they won't address it in the draft, but I don't think they'll spend big on an offensive lineman in free agency. We'll see there. You mentioned the run game, and I want to get to a couple other things not related to this current team. But the run game certainly up and down during the 2022 season. Yeah. Part of that was a new offensive line, certainly. But people look at Joe Mixon, certainly outside the building, and say, huge cap hit. They can save money against the cap. We know he's still a good back. I think he was efficient for most of the season.
Yeah.
But maybe you need to get younger there and certainly cheaper. And the cheaper aspect, I think, is the thing that a lot of people are stressing. How do you view Joe Mixon? Do you think he's going to be back next season under his current contract?
Yeah, I do think he's going to be back. I mean, I think they like him. I mean, you could have made an argument for him. I mean, I don't know what happened in the conference championship game, but leading up to that, I mean, he was one of their key players. I mean, he had 60 catches, and he made a lot of big plays. I think they the running stats aren't great, but you know what they tell you. They tell you, well, it's not just the running stats, it's the RPOs, it's the check down game. And I just thought Mixon was a valuable two-way threat. He had some big runs, he had some big catches. He was a big reason I thought they were so efficient on third down. What they finished third or fourth in the league in third down conversions. And a big thing was checking the thing down to Joe on first and second down. And those were, they were not 2-yard gains. They were 8-yard gains, and they were difference makers. So, I don't know. I mean, I get the numbers and all that. I get the cap hit and all that. But he's a valuable player for them. I mean, I don't know, who's going to replace him? You know what I mean? I think P. Ryan is up, I believe, right?
He is.
They have to, Joe's under contract. So, who's going to, this is the great Pete Brown question. Pete Brown was great at saying, and Paul Brown was great at saying this, okay, if you're going to get rid of him, who are you going to replace him with? That's another thing you got to think about. They sat down Evans in late in the year. Trayvon Williams was getting some snaps, but he's clearly, he's kind of a special teams kick returner type guy. So do you have to go get somebody? Are you going to go get somebody else younger and cheaper? You get what you pay for. So, and that's a valuable, I think to me, he played a valuable position there because obviously nobody's playing these guys man to man anymore, and you better have a good, tough, durable back that can catch it and run it. And I know he's got a big number, but it's also a big spot in the offense too. At least that's my opinion, and I may be way off.
No, I agree. That's the part where I try to. You can't separate it, but you try to, because I think Mixon at an affordable number, nobody's even having this conversation because he does contribute and he does make a bunch of plays. And you're right. I think he's evolved as a pass catcher. And especially this year with the way they were facing too high all the time and Jamar was getting doubled. And it was such a big part of their offense, just moving the chains and finding ways to move the ball downfield. I agree with you. He was productive. I just wonder if there's a way to get that number more manageable. I don't know. Yeah. But maybe they go that route. I don't know. Maybe Joe doesn't want to go that route either. Who
I don't know. I mean, that's something. Yeah, I don't know. And me, I got, I think running backs are great, and I may be too old school on that, but what did the Chiefs rush for in the Super Bowl, right? I remember, and Andy Reid doesn't run the ball. He doesn't run the ball, and he ended up running for $153. So, you do have to run the ball with these, and you need a good back. I thought Pacheco was great, by the way. I thought Pacheco was a really good, tough back, and so is McKinnon, and I think the Bengals have that same type of attack.
Yep. No, I think he's a big part of it, and it will be interesting numbers wise if the number impacts it, because there's no doubt from a captain standpoint, leadership standpoint, on-field standpoint,
right? Joe
Mixon had a positive impact on the team.
Yeah,
and so
I agree with you. He's whatever. I think he's worth the hit, but
We'll see, right? It's one of the many questions. There's so many off-season questions for this team, and Geoff, I won't keep you too much longer, but two things I want to hit on really quickly. The first, Ken Riley going to the Hall of Fame. It's a long time coming, I would say, and no one knows that better than you. You're the one in those rooms debating and voting and stating the case for Ken Riley. So what did that mean to you, and what was it
it's
like?
Great I just felt so happy for his family and for the fans. I remember when I wasn't on the committee, I remember going to Super Bowls and standing outside the committee room, and they get them, and I would get the voters as they came out and say, "Is Ken Riley mentioned? Is Ken Anderson mentioned? Where are these guys? How come they aren't in there?" And they would just look at you blankly. So we've come a long way, baby.
When did you do that, Geoff? Roughly
back in 03, 04, 05.
Wow.
And it's I remember Paul Zimmerman, the late great Paul Zimmerman. He pointed his finger there. This had to be 02 or 03, and he says, "How many of those voters do you think know who Ken Anderson even is?" And that was in 03. So it's and I feel like sometimes somebody would point the finger to, I would point the finger to somebody and say, "How many people know who Willie Anderson is?" I mean, that's sometimes you just beat your head against the wall. But no, it's a great thing for the family. It's bittersweet. Kenny should be here to enjoy it. Passed away in 2020 at the age of 72. We talked about it a lot. I wrote a lot of stories about him before he passed. I wish I could have done more to get him in while he was alive. Talking to his wife, Barbara, out in Arizona, she said he was kind of resigned to it. That she told him, he told her then that, not in my lifetime. That was in 2019. They had just celebrated their 50th anniversary. And, you just wish it, when a guy goes in, a guy puts in. When a guy deserves to go in, put him in because, it's, clearly 65 interceptions in 1988 stands up just as well as it does in 2023. Why he didn't go in the 90s and didn't go in until now, I don't know. But he's home. He's where he belongs, and I'm glad his family is able to celebrate it. I'm glad the fans are able to celebrate it. Somebody asked me, how many people do you think how many people do you think will go to the induction? I said, there's going to be a lot of people from Cincinnati, I think, are going to go up there. It's close. It's drivable. Bengals Gym has done a great job getting interest in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame itself, the interest has grown in the last 20 years with the league. The league is mushroomed. I think there's going to be a great crowd up there from Cincinnati, a great Bengals crowd.
I agree with you, and it was really cool to have Anthony Munoz in on the mix and making that call.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome. And
25 years ago, if he was inducted 25 years ago, how hard is that to believe? You weren't even born.
I was. I wish I was that young still. Unfortunately, I'm on the wrong side of 30. So yeah, I was alive and well. Don't you worry, Geoff. One guy that we both remember being drafted, and I would say exceeding expectations as a rookie and really living up to expectations as the 4th overall pick, is AJ Green. And as of now, and I'm stealing Dan Horde's words, but I still think it's true, as you kick my tail on the beat and the rest of people, I think you're the first and only Bengals reporter to talk to AJ Green post-retirement. Yeah. What was it like talking to him, and what's gone on? What have really your thoughts been about AJ Green upon retirement, given what he walked into in 2011 after he was the 4th overall pick? Because it's not like it was all peaches and cream when him and Andy walked in.
Yeah, no, James, you talked to him enough, and it's just like it was like talking to him after a game. It was like talking to him after a win, because after a loss, AJ, he would have been standing in front of his locker still dressed and just steam coming off his head after a loss. But he talked after a win or a loss. But this is like talking to him after a win. Reflective, very straightforward. He sounded a little bit relieved to me, a little bit. I think he's happy to be with the family full time now. I think he's really loves being a dad, and I think he felt that pulling at him. I mean, you can probably relate to that now. The string, Easy is his oldest is 6, the youngest is 4. That's Gunner. Easy's is a 6-year-old, and I think he really wants to be with them. And I think he doesn't have to haul him somewhere. He doesn't have to haul him to Arizona or somewhere else to play. He's done playing, and I think you hit a great point there about what he walked into. And I went back. I looked at some of the stuff that after that first game, when the first game of the Green Dalton era.
Yep.
And I always called it the Green Dalton era, right? Because AJ got here first, Dalton got here the next day, so AJ was first. But Whitworth came in, was in the locker room saying, they said we wouldn't win a game. They said we'd go 0-16. And that's what they were saying in 2011, right?
They were, yes.
People were saying they won't win a game. And then they won the first one. And not only that, they won, I think, 6 out of their first 8.
They did.
And Andy and AJ set the tone for that. I mean, that was an unbelievable year. It's one of the more underrated years in Bengals history. That in 2009.
Yep.
I mean, because they didn't win a playoff game, and Green and Dalton didn't win a playoff game, people forget it, how far they took the program from where it was in 2011. Remember, they had a lockout. They couldn't meet with the coaches. They couldn't talk to the coaches until the last week of July.
That's another good point. That gets lost is the lockout. Yeah, you're right.
They traded Chad. Like AJ and Chad were teammates for 3 months. But, I mean, it was, they weren't together, but they were on the roster together.
And they were never going to be together.
No, that's
the
why
powers
he was
that be were never letting Chad near AJ.
But he was but he changed the tone, with –
He did.
And God, I love Chad. He was a terrific player, but there was always a little bit of drama,
And it had reached its end.
Yeah. But AJ and Andy it was so opposite. It was like these young guys who didn't know what they were doing, were loving it and having fun playing the game. And Andy was the first guy to throw 20 touchdowns and win 9 games in the history of the league and go to the playoffs as a rookie quarterback. And AJ was a big part of that, man. I mean, AJ was he was a beast from the minute he stepped on the field.
When I knew that they were going to be good as a tandem and that team had a chance to be good, it was actually a loss. It wasn't the Cleveland win in week 1. They went to Denver, I think, the following week.
Yeah.
And they lost, I think, by 2.
Yeah.
But Andy and AJ just gave the Broncos all they could handle.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was a good Broncos defense. And I'm like, this team, they have a shot because they still had Cedric Benson. And Jerome Simpson had one decent year. That was the decent year. And they also had Jermaine Gresham at tight end. So they had some weapons.
Right. Yeah, no, the Denver game is a great point by you. I think Jerome Simpson had 100 yards in that game too. I think he and AJ both had 100. And I think that was the game where Andy said that was the first touchdown AJ caught where he kind of defied geometry with the line and got his feet down.
Yep.
It was that game. And Andy said, he gave a glimpse of what was to come in that one, because that was, he barely, how did he do that? I mean, how did he do that with his feet? It was, I don't know how he did it, and you wonder, and of course, there's always going to be a big if with AJ. I mean, what if he hadn't get hurt? And that was the thing that impressed me too, James, was there was no bitterness. There was no bitterness about the injuries. There was no, it was just, there wasn't any bitterness about how he left Cincinnati, which was a tough way to go out because it was such a struggle in 2020. Nobody wants to go out like that. And but he bitter. He wasn't a bitter guy. He gave his best. He's a throwback, man. He went and did what he had to do, and he let the chips fall where they may. And just a lot of grace, and a lot of greatness.
And the thing I loved about your piece was the fact that clearly his family, huge Bengals fans, and going to root for the Bengals. Yeah. And you mentioned the bitterness part. That would be hard. The way it ended, he goes to Arizona, and this new receiver comes in named Jamar Chase, and they go to the Super Bowl. That wasn't that long ago. Yeah. And it didn't sound like he had anything but love for the Bengals.
And it all kind of it was – he won Andy's debut, although Andy wasn't in the game, but he won Andy's debut with a fourth quarter touchdown catch.
Bruce Gradkowski, yep.
Right. And he should have won Burrow's debut, and the referees never should have thrown that flag on offensive pass interference, which would have been a great bookend to the eras. But you're exactly right. I mean, his kids are playing on Madden. They're playing Jamad, they're playing T and Mixon and Burrow. And I said, hey, what about AJ Green circa 2013? Use that guy.
That's right. Yeah, that would be – heck, could you imagine him as well on this team? That would be –
oh, wow. Well, it's just I just, you wonder if if you just could have stayed, he would have been a sure shot, knockdown, first-round Hall of Famer. Now it's a tough one now with the numbers, but –
yeah.
But what a run! But what a great run! I hope people don't forget what he meant to that when they went to 5 straight playoffs.
Agreed. Totally agree. He is Geoff Hobson. Make sure you check out all of his work at Bengals.com at Geoff Hobson on Twitter. Geoff, I know I was long-winded. I really appreciate the conversation, and I will see you at the Combine in a few weeks.
Thank you for letting me talk this long. It's never happened before in history. Thank you very much.